The Forgotten Ghost. The Galactic Syndicate had ruled the stars for centuries, crushing any opposition with its massive fleet. But there was one story that even the most powerful admirals feared, a legend whispered in the dark corners of space. It was about the Phantom, a warship so deadly that it could destroy entire fleets in minutes. But the Syndicate called it a myth, a fable meant to scare their enemies. Dr. Elias Carter didn't believe in myths. He was a historian, a seeker of truth. And right now, he was staring at something that shouldn't exist. Inside a hidden archive on a distant moon, Elias wiped the dust off an old data tablet. The records were ancient, buried under layers of classified files. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage of a massive black warship hovering over a battlefield. The ship had no markings, no identification, just a silent, monstrous presence. Then the screen flashed. In an instant, entire enemy fleets vanished in a storm of fire and destruction. The footage ended abruptly. Elias swallowed hard. He had read about this ship before, the Phantom. But everyone said it was just a story, a ghost ship that had disappeared centuries ago. Yet here it was. His hand shook as he scrolled through the files. There were coordinates, old ones. If this was real, then the ship wasn't destroyed. It was hidden. Elias knew he was in danger. He had broken into a Syndicate-controlled archive, searching for the truth. If they caught him, they wouldn't ask questions. As he copied the data onto a small drive, a robotic voice echoed through the chamber. Unauthorized access detected. Security en route. His heart pounded. He grabbed the drive and ran. Down the dimly lit corridors, his boots echoed against the cold metal floor. He turned a corner and froze. A Syndicate officer stood in his way, his black armor gleaming under the flickering lights. "You shouldn't be here," the officer growled, reaching for his weapon. Elias had no choice. He slammed his shoulder into the officer, knocking him off balance. Alarms blared as he sprinted towards his ship. The Syndicate would come after him, but he didn't care. He had proof. The Phantom was real, and if he found it, he would change everything. As Elias' ship launched into space, Syndicate fighters appeared on his radar. They were coming. He gripped the controls and pushed his engines to the limit. The small transport ship wasn't built for combat, but he had one advantage. He knew where he was going. The coordinates led him to a dead zone in space. No stars, no planets, just darkness. No one ever traveled there. That's where the Phantom was hiding. But before he could jump to hyperspace, his ship rocked violently. A laser blast scorched his left wing. "Syndicate patrol, stand down, or we will open fire," a voice commanded over the comms. Elias gritted his teeth. No way. He slammed a button, releasing a burst of electronic interference. For a brief moment, the enemy's targeting systems flickered. That was all he needed. He pulled the throttle and jumped into the void. The chase had begun. And if the legend was true, he was about to wake up something the galaxy had long forgotten. Something unstoppable. Elias Carter's hands trembled as he stared at the ancient data tablet. The dim light of the archive room flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows across the dusty consoles. He had spent years chasing rumors, digging through forgotten records, and following whispers in the dark corners of the galaxy. But this was something else. The Phantom was real. The footage on the screen played in silence, yet Elias could almost hear the screams of soldiers as the black warship loomed over them. No insignia, no markings, just a massive, silent specter in the void. And then, without warning, it struck. Flashes of light. Explosions. Entire Syndicate fleets vanished in a matter of seconds. The recording cut off abruptly, leaving only a single set of coordinates blinking on the screen. Elias felt his heart pounding. If these coordinates were accurate, then the ship wasn't destroyed. It was hidden, waiting in the dark. A sharp beep echoed through the chamber. His breath caught in his throat. The security system had detected him. He had hacked his way into the Syndicate's classified archives, and now they knew. A robotic voice rang through the speakers. Unauthorized access detected. Security en route. He grabbed the data drive and shoved it into his pocket before sprinting toward the exit. The hallways of the underground facility were long and cold, lined with steel walls that seemed to stretch endlessly. He turned a corner, his boots slamming against the floor, and came face to face with a Syndicate officer. The man's black armor gleamed under the dim lights. "You shouldn't be here," the officer growled, reaching for his weapon. Elias didn't think. He lunged forward, slamming his shoulder into the officer's chest. The impact sent them both crashing against the wall. Before the officer could react, Elias was already running. Alarms blared. Red warning lights flashed. More guards would be on their way. He had minutes, maybe less. His ship was docked outside the facility, hidden beneath the rocky surface of the desolate moon. As he reached the airlock, gunfire erupted behind him. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off the metal walls. He threw himself into the cockpit, sealing the hatch just as another round of shots slammed into the ship's hull. Engines roared to life. The small transport ship lifted off, dust and debris swirling in its wake. But before he could make it to open space, his radar beeped frantically. Syndicate fighters. 3 of them, closing in fast. "This is Syndicate Patrol. Stand down immediately, or we will open fire." Elias gritted his teeth. They weren't going to let him leave. He had no weapons, no shields strong enough to withstand a direct hit. His only option was speed. He pushed the engines to their limit, the stars stretching into streaks as he prepared for a hyperspace jump. A sudden impact rocked the ship. A laser blast had struck his left wing, sending warning signals flashing across his console. Another hit like that, and he wouldn't make it out. His fingers flew over the controls, activating an old trick, an electronic pulse that scrambled targeting systems for a few seconds. The moment the Syndicate fighters hesitated, he made his move. With a final push of the throttle, his ship surged forward, vanishing into the void just as another barrage of lasers tore through the space he had just occupied. Elias exhaled shakily. He had escaped, but the hard part was just beginning. He glanced at the coordinates displayed on his screen. They led to a dead sector of space. No planets, no stations, nothing but darkness. No one traveled there. That's where the Phantom was waiting. And if the legends were true, waking it up would change everything. The darkness of space stretched endlessly around Elias Carter's ship. The only sound inside the cockpit was the steady hum of the engines. His fingers hovered over the control panel, staring at the coordinates displayed on the screen. The location was deep within a dead zone, a part of space where no one dared to travel. If the legends were true, that was where the Phantom lay hidden. A warship so powerful that it had erased entire fleets in mere minutes. The Syndicate had spent centuries pretending it was just a myth, but Elias had seen the evidence with his own eyes. Now he was going to prove the truth. The jump drive activated, and the ship surged forward into hyperspace. Stars blurred past the cockpit window. And for a moment, he let himself breathe. He had barely escaped the Syndicate's pursuit, but he knew they wouldn't give up easily. They would hunt him, track his movements, and do everything in their power to stop him. They feared the Phantom. If Elias found it first, it could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Minutes passed like hours until the ship dropped out of hyperspace. The vast emptiness of the dead sector greeted him. No planets, no stations, just silence. His scanners picked up nothing. No signals, no life forms, no debris. It was as if the universe itself had forgotten this place. His heart pounded. What if the ship wasn't here? What if it really was just a story? He adjusted the controls, sending out a pulse scan. A moment later, the screen flickered. Something was there. A faint signature, deep within the void. His hands tightened on the controls as he moved toward it. As he neared, the darkness shifted. His ship's floodlights illuminated a massive structure, its black surface blending into the void. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering armor plating, massive turrets, and an eerie stillness that sent a chill down his spine. The Phantom. His ship's sensors struggled to get a full reading. The warship's hull was made of an unknown material that absorbed most scans. It had no active power signatures, no communication signals. It was a ghost. He maneuvered closer, searching for an entrance. The ship had to have some kind of docking bay. After a few minutes of circling, he found it, a hangar door barely visible against the black hull. His hand shook as he sent a signal to the old ship, hoping for some kind of response. Nothing. With no other choice, he carefully guided his ship toward the entrance and activated his docking clamps. As he stepped into the airlock, a cold sweat dripped down his back. The silence inside the Phantom was overwhelming. He activated his helmet light, casting a dim glow on the metallic corridor. Dust floated in the air. The ship had been abandoned for centuries, yet the interior was eerily intact. He moved cautiously through the corridors, passing by control panels covered in layers of dust. The technology was ancient, yet far more advanced than anything in the Syndicate's fleet. Every step echoed in the hollow silence, a reminder that no one had walked these halls in centuries. Then, something changed. A low hum filled the air. The walls vibrated slightly beneath his fingertips. His helmet display flickered. The ship was waking up. A deep mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. Unauthorized presence detected. Identify yourself. Elias froze. The ship wasn't dead. It was waiting. Watching. He took a shaky breath. I'm Elias Carter. I'm here to uncover the truth. For a long moment, there was silence. Then the lights flickered, and the voice spoke again. Truth acknowledged. Command authorization required. Elias felt his pulse quicken. The ship had an AI. It was still operational. If he could access its systems, he could learn everything. Why the Phantom was created, who built it, and why it had vanished. But before he could respond, the ship's sensors detected something outside. A warning flashed across his helmet display. Incoming ships detected. Syndicate patrol approaching. His blood ran cold. The Syndicate had followed him. They knew. And now, the Phantom wasn't just a forgotten ghost. It was a target. Elias moved quickly, his footsteps echoing through the empty corridors of the Phantom. The ship was ancient, yet the atmosphere inside felt alive. The walls vibrated faintly, as if the giant warship was breathing, waiting for something, or someone, to wake it fully. The Syndicate was coming. His helmet display showed their ships closing in fast. If they boarded the Phantom, they would either take it for themselves or destroy it. He couldn't let that happen. This warship was a legend, a ghost from history that held the power to change everything. The deep mechanical voice echoed again. Command authorization required. Initiate protocol. Elias hesitated. He had no command codes. Whoever had piloted the Phantom was long gone, their secrets buried with them. But he had come too far to stop now. He turned toward what looked like a control panel, wiping away the dust covering the ancient interface. Strange symbols flickered across the screen, but one thing was clear. The ship was asking for a command. Override manual control, he said, hoping the AI understood. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ship rumbled. The control panel flickered, and a new message appeared. Manual override granted. Defensive systems online. Outside, the Syndicate fighters moved into position. Their sleek black ships circled the Phantom, scanning its surface. A cold voice crackled through Elias's communicator. Unidentified vessel, you are in violation of Syndicate space. Stand down immediately. Elias watched from the viewport as the fighters charged their weapons. They didn't plan to negotiate. He turned back to the console. Activate defenses. The ship responded instantly. The once dead interior lit up with a faint red glow as emergency power surged through its ancient circuits. Elias heard deep mechanical movements beneath the floors and behind the walls. Then, Outside, something shifted. The Phantom's hull opened, revealing massive, long-dormant turrets. In a flash, they roared to life. The Syndicate ships reacted, but it was too late. A burst of energy erupted from the warship's cannons, cutting through the darkness of space like a blade through paper. One fighter was obliterated instantly, reduced to burning debris. The others scrambled, trying to retreat. But the Phantom was faster. Another shot. Another explosion. Elias gripped the console as the ship vibrated with power. The warship wasn't just defending itself. It was fighting with a precision and intelligence that no ordinary AI should have. Then the voice spoke again. Enemy threat neutralized. Awaiting further commands. Elias exhaled, his mind racing. The Phantom had just wiped out a Syndicate patrol in seconds. If the Syndicate hadn't been sure of the warship's existence before, they were now. More would come. Stronger forces. He turned back to the control panel. If he was going to survive, and if the Phantom was truly as powerful as the legends claimed, he needed to understand it. He needed to know what had happened to this warship, why it had been abandoned, and who had built it. Because one thing was clear. The Phantom wasn't just a relic. It was a weapon. And now it was awake. Elias took a deep breath, his fingers trembling as they hovered over the console. The Phantom had just destroyed a Syndicate patrol in seconds, but this was only the beginning. The warship's power was undeniable, yet its history remained a mystery. Who built it? Why had it been abandoned? And more importantly, why did it respond to him? The deep mechanical voice returned, awaiting further commands. Elias hesitated. He wasn't a soldier, just a scavenger chasing legends. But now he was in control of something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. If the Syndicate came back with a fleet, would the Phantom be strong enough to fight? He tapped the console, scanning through what little data was available. Most of the warship's logs were corrupted or locked behind encryption, but he found something, a single, unmarked file. He pressed it. A holographic projection flickered to life in front of him, a grainy image of an old battle recorded from the Phantom's perspective. A massive Syndicate fleet loomed in the distance, hundreds of warships surrounding the Phantom. The warship fired its weapons, moving with impossible speed. Enemy ships exploded in rapid succession, their shields useless against the Phantom's devastating firepower. Then, suddenly, the recording cut off. A new message appeared on the screen. Final battle. System shutdown initiated. Elias frowned. The ship hadn't been destroyed in battle. It had been deactivated. But why? Before he could think further, a proximity alert blared through the Phantom's control room. More ships were incoming. Elias' heart pounded as he checked the sensors. A fleet of Syndicate warships, larger than before. They had brought reinforcements. His hands tightened into fists. He had two choices, run or fight. He turned to the console. Activate main power. Prepare for combat. The Phantom responded immediately. The once dead corridors hummed with energy. The warship's systems, dormant for centuries, roared back to life. Weapons locked onto the incoming fleet. Shield generators powered up. The ship was ready. Outside, the Syndicate fleet slowed. They had expected a derelict warship. Instead, they found a fully operational legend. A voice crackled through Elias' communicator, cold, controlled. You have no idea what you're playing with, scavenger. Stand down, and we may spare you. Elias smirked. No thanks. He pressed the command. The Phantom opened fire. The battle had begun. The Phantom moved like a predator awakened from a deep slumber. Its weapons roared to life, releasing devastating energy blasts that ripped through the Syndicate fleet. Enemy ships exploded in rapid succession, their shields crumbling under the relentless assault. Elias gripped the console, his mind racing as he tried to keep up with the warship's actions. He wasn't controlling the Phantom. It was fighting on its own. Reacting. Calculating. Destroying. The Syndicate fleet scrambled to counterattack. Fighters weaved through space, firing barrages of plasma rounds at the Phantom's hull. But the warship's shields absorbed the attacks with ease. The Phantom responded with pinpoint accuracy, striking down enemies before they could even get close. A warning flashed across the screen. Multiple enemy battleships detected. Heavy fire incoming. Elias cursed under his breath. The Syndicate had learned from their mistakes. Their remaining warships weren't retreating. Instead, they were regrouping, forming a blockade around the Phantom. The communicator crackled again. "We know what you are now. We know what you've awakened. Surrender the ship, and you may live." Elias stared at the incoming fleet. The Syndicate wasn't just after him. They wanted the Phantom. They had known about it for a long time, maybe even feared it. His eyes darted to the console. There had to be something. Some hidden system, some last resort weapon he hadn't activated yet. Then, the ship's voice returned. Final combat protocol engage. Tactical maneuvers initiated. Without Elias touching a thing, the Phantom moved. The massive warship twisted with unnatural speed, breaking through the blockade. It weaved between enemy ships, dodging attacks with impossible precision. The Syndicate's confidence turned to panic. Their formation collapsed as the Phantom cut through them like a blade. One by one, their warships fell. Elias barely had time to react as the Phantom charged forward. A massive Syndicate battleship loomed ahead, its weapons charging for a final, desperate strike. The Phantom fired first. A concentrated energy blast tore through the Syndicate flagship, splitting it in two. A blinding explosion followed, sending shockwaves through space. Silence. Elias exhaled, his hand still gripping the console. The Syndicate fleet was gone. The Phantom had won. The warship slowed, its weapons powering down. The battle was over. But Elias knew this was just the beginning. The Syndicate wouldn't stop. They had seen what the Phantom could do. And now, the entire galaxy would know that the lost warship wasn't a fable. It was real. And it had returned. Elias sat in the Phantom's command chair, his heart still pounding from the battle. The warship drifted through space, its hull barely scratched despite the intense firefight. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. The Syndicate was defeated for now, but they would return. Stronger, smarter, more prepared. The Phantom's voice echoed through the control room. Enemy forces neutralized, awaiting further directives. Elias hesitated. He had no plan, no crew, and no idea why this ship had chosen him. But he knew one thing. The Phantom wasn't just a weapon. It was something far more powerful, and the Syndicate feared it. He tapped the console, trying to unlock more of the warship's hidden data. Fragments of corrupted files flickered across the screen. Ancient battle reports, encrypted messages, classified orders. Then, one file stood out. A transmission. Elias pressed play. A holographic figure appeared, distorted but unmistakably human. The voice was calm yet urgent. "If you're hearing this, the Phantom has been reactivated. That means the war isn't over." Elias leaned in. This ship was never meant to be found. It was designed to be the Syndicate's reckoning. But they feared it, so they buried it, erased its existence from history. "We failed to stop them before. Maybe you won't." The message cut off, leaving only static. Elias clenched his fists. The Phantom wasn't just some lost warship. It was a secret weapon, one that the galaxy had forgotten. But the Syndicate hadn't. That's why they had come so quickly. That's why they had sent an entire fleet to reclaim it. And that meant they would be back. The communicator crackled to life. A new signal. This one wasn't Syndicate. It was civilian. A distress call. Elias hesitated for only a moment. Then he locked onto the signal and set a course. If the Phantom was meant to fight, then it would fight. And this time, the galaxy would remember.